For the viewers that may not know Sarah's work, she is probably, I guess she's becoming more and more a modern day and younger version of Dolores Cannon.
And the higher self has said that in order for us to really transcend ourselves, we have to release these stories about being right. And I love how you are talking about we choose love or being right.
The moment that we embrace the opposite that is causing us the suffering is the moment we no longer need to suffer from that thing because we have learned and integrated it.
And what the higher self says all the time is like when you really love the physical issue, then it can start to go away because you love it as this divine teacher.
It's the alchemy when we start realizing, I think this is the real meaning behind alchemy all along, which is the suffering and the difficulty is the gold of soul evolution.
Yes.
Sarah Breskman Cosme, what a pleasure to have you on the Think Tank today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's such a pleasure for me.
It's so great to see you. It seems like only yesterday we were together in Miami. And, that whole story is a story in and of itself, I think, that we're definitely going to get into. But for the viewers that may not know Sarah's work, she is probably, I guess she's becoming more and more a modern day and younger version of Dolores Cannon, who brought so much into our lives, into our world, and has had a profound impact on so many people, having developed the QHHT methodology for hypnosis. And I had never been hypnotized before, and so I subjected myself to it, and it turned out to be a mind-boggling, mind-bending, and mind-blowing experience. And I am just thrilled to have you here with me today. And in addition, you're also an author, a prolific author, who started out not in anything esoteric. And even our first time talking, I was kind of feeling this feeling that you had about, okay, yeah, I wanted to be a serious psychologist and go down that route. I'm like, wow, you definitely veered off somewhere from that particular career path. Not that you still couldn't have done that, but you've now become this prolific author who's written about past lives and experiences that you've had. It's really mind-boggling stuff. So it is thrilling to have you here with me and to have this discussion with you. And I think it's going to take everybody on a journey, hopefully, where they can learn more about themselves through this process too.
Oh, I love it. Yes, that's really what I am so passionate about helping people do is to learn that the answers are within, because when you go deep within anyone, you reach the same place. You reach universal consciousness. And thanks so much for saying that about me. I love Dolores so much, obviously, and I am not the only one that does this work, but I feel really honored to be, doing what she did, and I try my best.
So tell me, how did you get into this? Like, okay, you're going to university, you were going to become a clinical psychologist, and how did you end up going into doing past life regressions and channelings of different entities and the higher self and stuff like that?
What's really interesting is everyone talks all the time about manifestation, that you have to create it in your mind and then it will occur. But I never did that. I never created this life for myself and that I was aware of. I wanted to be a psychologist because when I was younger, I had so many problems. I was really overweight. I had phobias and fears and OCD. That was terrible. I mean, sometimes it would take me about an hour before I would leave the house. So I had all kinds of debilitating issues. And then I had trouble sleeping. And it was so much that my parents put me in therapy. And that's how I learned about therapy. And I thought, gosh, I want to help everyone so they don't suffer. Even though I didn't really get any better, I just felt like at least it was nice to talk to someone. And that was the only modality I knew of. And also my parents were very scientific and I was too. So I wanted to set out to be the best psychologist because I wanted to help and save everyone. And when I was in college, something happened to me that completely changed my life. About a couple months after I started college, I went back home to my family's house for the first time after being away for a little while. And when I walked through the door of my family's house, there's a mirror that you see when you walk in. And I looked at myself in the mirror and my jaw dropped because I had only been away for about 2.5 months at college. But when I was away, somehow, even though I was eating really terrible foods and I was, drinking beer, I had lost a considerable amount of weight, and I had only been gone for 2.5 months. And then I looked at myself and I was shocked. Oh my gosh. While I was away, I had forgotten to have my problems. And then that completely changed my life because I realized that by changing my environment, what actually happened was I changed my thought patterns. And that changed my whole life, my thought patterns. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's our thought patterns. That's what creates all these issues. It's not what's happening in the external world, it's my thoughts about it. And then I thought, oh my God, I'm going to save everyone, and everyone could benefit from this.
Mm-hmm.
But, no one really cared. They were like, okay, I need a pill for that. So I continued and graduated college. And before going to graduate school, where I was going to become the best psychologist, I had to do, because I did feel that way, I had to do an internship where my job was basically to counsel the residents and then give them their medication. And I learned all about the medication. Yes, I was going for psychology, but I still had to do this in my internship. So I was the one responsible for giving them their medication. And I felt, and here I was, like gung ho, like is an understatement for me. I was going to help everyone. I felt within about a week of being at this place and working full time that every single thing I had learned in college was an absolute lie.
Hi, I'm Robert Edward Grant. I invite you to explore my transformative books, Philomath and Polymath, each designed to expand your understanding of the world and ourselves. In Philomath, which means lover of learning, discover how mathematics weaves together physics, music, and prime number theory, revealing the universe's interconnected nature. It's more than a book, it's an enlightening voyage. Polymath builds on Philomath's insights, exploring the genius of thinkers like Pythagoras and Da Vinci, who used geometry to revolutionize science, art, and governance. Rediscover the polymathic roots that sparked past ages of enlightenment. Join me on this journey as well. Visit robertedwardgrant.com to get your copies today. Let's foster a new era of enlightenment and collaboration for a brighter future. Okay.
Because here
Except
I was.
the math. Except the math part.
Well, except for the math part. But here I was. I wanted to learn the leading edge of thought for how we as a society could help people with their mental issues. And I felt, this is just my own experience for a reason. I mean, I'm not knocking the field, but for me, this is how I felt. I felt this is the leading edge. Can't we do anything better? Because no one got any better that I saw. In fact, they got way worse. And then I saw how the pharmaceutical companies were testing these people. They were just part of their studies. If they wanted a person, they could just use one of these people. And no one was really getting to the root cause of their issues. They were there for a reason. No one cared about those reasons. And so I just felt there must be something more. How can we, as a society, really think that this is the best thing we have to offer? And I stayed there for a while, but I eventually quit and just gave up everything I had learned and didn't go to graduate school. I didn't become a psychologist because I just thought there must be something better. I can offer people something better. And I remembered learning in college in one class about regression hypnosis. So I thought, wouldn't it make sense to get to the root cause of someone's issue? that way they can really release it. So in order to become a master hypnotist, I had to do many different classes, and I had to learn at the time, this is before 2009, I had to learn lose weight, quit smoking, and past life regression. I had to learn past life regression. I didn't want to learn past life regression because I didn't believe in it. I wanted to just get to the root cause of their issue in their childhood. But since I had to learn it, I had to try it out. And it was really interesting because within maybe the first couple practice sessions that I had doing past life regressions, people were healing themselves. And just from like one session. And sometimes the root cause of their issue seemed to be from a different past life. I thought it was just could be a story that they were making up, but whatever this story was about their past life, they were healing themselves. And Dr. Brian Weiss was getting really popular at the time. So I studied with him. He was my first teacher. And I did his method for many, many years. And I really enjoyed it. And then over the years, my eyes kind of opened to spirituality. And then I felt as if something was missing. So I contacted this psychic, and she said, it was so funny. Now we're friends. She said, wow, this is the easiest reading I've ever done because everyone has all these different potentials, but yours is so obvious. You're supposed to do Dolores Cannon's method. That's why you feel like something's missing in your life. And you'll be writing books. You'll be speaking about it all over the world. And you're just going to be writing all these books that will help heal people. And have you ever had a terrible psychic reading? I just thought, oh my gosh, a psychic reading is so bad. I would never do these things. I don't know who she's talking about. It's obviously not
Yeah.
me. I would never write books. So I just dismissed it 100%
Wow.
until many months later, I found out about Dolores Cannon. And I looked into it a little bit. And sure enough, just like the psychic said, I I worked my way up from the bottom level to become a master in this field. And before the quarantine, I was actually assisting Julia Cannon, Dolores Cannon's daughter, and assisting her in teaching all over the world before the quarantine. And then I wrote my book, and all that started to unfold. So her name is Emmanuel McIntosh. That's the psychic's name. She's really good. Um, but that's essentially how I got into this stuff. And it just is so interesting to me because it doesn't matter what I try to do. I have to surrender because there's a greater force that's pushing me in alignment with my true path. No matter what I do or mess up, or there aren't any mistakes. I mean, everything is just it. It's interesting because there's nothing really to worry about. So now I know a lot about past lives, esoteric wisdom, but it all came about by accident. I never sought out to learn any of this stuff. I wasn't really interested.
Wow. Wow. So fascinating. So, okay. So I know my experience that I had with you, right? And the reason why we ended up connecting was because there was another QHHT session that you had done that I had heard about because people started writing about it on my page, on my Instagram page. And so that was really the first time I think I'd heard your name in passing, and also I'd seen your picture at Gaia on a few things, but I didn't really know what it was that you were doing until probably around 4 months ago, 5 months ago, and so we ended up meeting at this conference called Contact in the Desert, and so first I have to ask you. And I did. Someone finally sent to me the QHHC session that somehow referenced me, and so I was like, "What the heck? I have to talk to somebody about this." Right? This is like too bizarre. And would you mind sharing that story a little bit?
Sure. So it was just one of my clients under hypnosis that allowed me to share her session. But when she was under hypnosis, she was a very clear channel of the higher consciousness coming through. And and all the things that she was tapped into were extremely powerful. And she actually ended up healing herself after that session, as many
Really?
people do in their QHHT sessions, because when you get to the root cause of an issue, it can be healed. But she saw you, Robert, as Ra. And again, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't really, know whether it was, something that was true or not. But she said, and you, Sarah, will be working with him. Again, I thought, I didn't think anything of it. She actually equated me to Leonardo da Vinci, which I still don't know if I believe, but she just said we would be working together. And I thought, I honestly didn't think anything of it until I saw you at the conference, and you agreed to do a session with me. And I thought,
Hmm.
huh, this is really interesting. So maybe there's something true to this, because when we did that session, okay, it's one thing to listen to the session, and when you listen to the session, you can feel the energy. But to me, it felt like listening to Ra. It was like the energy in the room of our session was so powerful. Just like as a practitioner, QHHT practitioner, we know, because we do this all the time. I do this almost every day. I do QHHT
Hmm.
sessions. And when you have a clear connection with this higher self and it comes through, it's unmistakable. You feel it. It's like the source is with you in the room. And I felt that to a higher degree when you were under and you were allowing source to come through you. And I thought, wow, I'm speaking with Ra.
Okay. Wow. So it was wild for me too. I mean, I'd never been hypnotized before, so the best way I could describe it is it was something in between sleep and wakefulness. So
Yeah.
I remember being awake and I remember saying the things that were being said, although a lot of the things that were coming out of my mouth were total surprises to me. And I could literally list off at least 50 things, literally, that were quite surprising to me, that just were, I don't know, just, and then I had a very strong sense of just knowing that was correct.
You are
And go ahead.
you are a great hypnosis subject, because unlike what you might see in the media, the more intelligent you are, and the ability to focus enables you to be a much greater, I mean, everybody can do this and it's very, very easy, but a greater hypnosis subject, because you can focus, clear your mind, and just allow the higher consciousness to come through. I mean, anyone can do it,
Yeah. Hmm.
but you're excellent.
Yeah, it was really, really a wild feeling. And this is now available actually, because it's now on your page on YouTube. And it is pretty mind blowing. And what was the most surprising thing that came out of it for you?
I was so shocked. Well, so many things, so many things. I was really shocked that the negative polarity needs to be thanked, and why. Because I think we look at the negative polarity and the negative aspect of everything as something to push away from, but instead it's the opposite. They're enabling, almost like, I guess, atom splitting, they're enabling this energy for
Yep.
the positive polarity to actually ascend. And when your higher self was saying that, it all made sense to me. Like, we should be thanking them. Like, thank you for being a jerk. Really, because without them, we wouldn't have this momentum.
Yeah.
And then what I was also thinking is, I've had other hypnosis sessions, where my clients are talking about the return of Thoth, the return of this consciousness. And they consider it like the return of the, almost like the Messiah in a way, because this is what enables the ascension process, is the return of this consciousness. Because how my clients, and these are clients for research, so these are very, very good
Mm-hmm.
hypnosis subjects like yourself. And I
Mm-hmm.
use multiple clients. This is how I do my research. I have over 5 or 6 hypnosis subjects that never meet each other ever. They don't know who each other are, and I ask them different questions to see if I can get uh, you know, the same answer, because I want to know if this is actually correct. They have been saying, this is how they describe it, that Earth herself wanted to be a part of this ascension process, and she put out a call. She said, I want to be a part of this ascension process. And what happened was that attracted the
Mm-hmm.
consciousness of Thoth, or the ascension keeper. He then came and then put up the pyramids. He put up the Great Pyramid as, I heard you call it the totem. They've just said the Great Pyramid, and all the pyramids are part of this Merkaba that is the ascension, basically, that he put it up for the ascension process.
Well, it's
Then,
funny you say that because we didn't talk about that, but
I know,
the ancient name, one of the ancient names of the Great Pyramid is Mer, and Khafre, you know, you could say is very similar to the Ka. And then Menkari Pyramid, the B and the M sound are generally interchangeable in many languages. So Mer Ka Ba are the three
of
pyramids
course,
on the.
really. So it's a reflection of ourselves, is what they've been saying, because just like our bodies have a
Hmm.
Merkaba,
Hmm.
so does this planetary sphere.
Right. Hmm.
And they've said that when this consciousness returns of Thoth, basically, Ra, the same consciousness, that what happens is it activates this kind of like grid with the when the consciousness is like here. And essentially what they've been saying, and I thought maybe you and I could work together and figure this out.
Yep.
They
Okay.
said that there is like, I'm a terrible video editor, but it's on one of my published videos too. That there is like an inscription somewhere in a pyramid. They didn't say where, but they said only the person that is supposed to find it will find it. Nobody would even know it's really there. That inscription will lead them to this special crystal that has a consciousness that comes from, it's basically like very, very ancient. This consciousness is within this crystal. When this Thoth, or the Messiah, comes back or whatever, essentially, and connects with this crystal, and it will be for the ascension.
Hmm.
Essentially, the whole Merkaba lights up and shoots out through each person's Merkaba. So it's very all connected. And then that triggers like a series of events, and leading up to like more self-awareness of each person, and feeling the divine love.
Hmm.
And then there's nowhere to go except up,
Interesting.
up.
Wow. Okay. So that's a lot to unpack. And so how many of these sessions, and I'm guessing it's from different people, have
Yeah,
been leading you back to the architect and Thoth?
so many. And you'll even see that in my books. It started in the Sphinx book, because the way I go about learning all this information is I don't try to find it. So keep in mind my background. I wasn't into any of this knowledge. So I really didn't know anything about Thoth.
Hmm. Hmm.
My clients started describing him, and in my Sphinx book, I talk about this, how this started. My clients started describing him as three. They said
Hmm.
someone comes, that's very important to the Sphinx, and his name is 3, and he wants to talk to you. Basically, he started coming into my sessions for about 2 years now. That
His
consciousness.
name is 3.
Yeah, it was interesting, and I said, "Why 3?" And my clients would say, "Because you can't call him a him or a her. You have to call him like 3." They didn't know who Thoth was, because I'm using these hypnosis subjects, and names are hard for these people a lot of times. And they said, he just goes by the name of 3. But
Huh.
what you're uncovering is really important to this person.
Yep.
And so he would share information. He just would share a lot of information about the Sphinx. And many of my other, clients started seeing that this consciousness kept coming through. So that's how it originated, through them calling him 3.
Wow.
Some of them
Okay.
know to call him Thoth. And then, so it's all very connected to many, ancient civilizations, especially that of Atlantis. Because when I was uncovering the information that went in my Atlantis book, it seemed,
Mm-hmm.
that there was like a faction of people that were greatly affected by. I have to be careful what I say. This is YouTube. Um, by experiments then
Got it.
in
Mm-hmm.
Atlantis that
Mm-hmm.
mirror what's happening now for a reason. So there were people that were affected by things happening in Atlantis that altered their DNA a little, to have animal parts. Many children were taken away, and that were affected by ants and killed. And Thoth apparently taught a group of parents. That's how he found them.
Wow.
Parents of these children that were affected by experimentation, how to keep the sacred knowledge. And so he told them to put a lot of it in the Sphinx, and they would be in light codes. He also showed them how to make things like monatomic gold, and a lot of that is hidden in a lot of these structures, as well as the pyramids, and
Mm-hmm.
mostly it was hidden in the Sphinx. So Toth really has been like a catalyst for all this and keeping this knowledge for when the time is right. They always say when the time
Yep.
is right. And whenever I get too close to information where the time is not right for,
Hmm.
they'll stop my session. They have stopped my session, and they tell me, you're getting too close to this information that we can't share right now. And what they say is that even some of the people that are ready for some of this information, it can't get into the wrong hands. So they stop it completely, because they know that my job is to share the information that they're ready to share. So it's really
Wow.
quite
So
fascinating.
wow. So if they have the wrong intention, then it won't get into their hands.
Yeah, will not get into their hands. It's very heavily guarded, is what they have said, which
Interesting.
is, yeah, which is really interesting. It's just, we're really being helped. We're uncovering not only
Mhm.
all this ancient knowledge, but we're really uncovering ourselves. That's the most important thing. Because
Absolutely.
when I ask the higher self of my clients, what is the most important thing that we should do? Like, how can we help other people? They always say, become a master, like a master of yourself. Become a spiritual master is what they said. Because when you do, it leaves a permanent imprint on this consciousness, just like Jesus or Buddha, and anyone can tap in to that spiritual master even after you leave the physical plane. And they said you will help so many people by mastering yourself. And the way to do that is to go into yourself, to really,
Yeah.
deal with your shadow.
Well, that's a lot more that I'd like to get into. Let me just take a quick break. I'll be right back. That is so fascinating, the whole discussion about the architect and about Thoth. And right before the call, you mentioned that you wanted to tell me about something else that happened this morning.
Yeah, I had a mini session with one of my clients this morning, and they said, there's this person with a name that starts with a W, and they want to get your attention. So I said, well, who is this person? And they said, oh, it looks like it might be connected to one of your clients, because they want that person to know that there's like leaves over top something, and that they need to basically, what she was saying is like, get the leaves off of something, and then you will find like the symbol or something about Olympia or the Olympics, maybe the gold. I don't know. That was the message this morning. But I thought that's really interesting, because I think I told you I was really curious about your past life as Walter.
Ah, okay. Well, it's interesting that you just said about Olympics because I immediately heard like Mount Olympus.
Huh. Interesting.
Hmm.
Well, I really
I
want to.
don't know what that means, but every once in a while I'll get like clairaudience,
Huh.
and that's one of the things. So the leaves are need to be brushed off of Mount Olympus.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
We'll
It's
see what that
interesting.
means. I'm sure we'll
Hmm.
know
We'll
next time.
probably it'll probably be revealed, right? That's the
Right.
thing. I like what you said earlier. There's no mistakes.
Yeah.
Everything happens in divine timing. Everything happens exactly as it should. Um, all the things that we choose are all exactly chosen by the higher self. It's what we call destiny is really just the free will of the higher self. And when we become in alignment with that higher self, then everything starts to become kind of magical and mystical. And that's part of the path of life.
Yeah, I like what your higher self was saying too, that there is no seeking.
Yeah.
There is no seeking. And it really helps you put it into perspective. We try so hard to accomplish things and receive things, but if you surrender, is what they said,
Yeah.
that's when you just surrender to the alignment of your higher
Yep.
self. That's
Hmm.
all we really have to do.
Well, that's not so easy. It sounds easy,
It isn't, it isn't easy.
especially when you've spent your whole life learning how to or believing that you've been willing everything.
Right. When you think it's all on your own shoulders, like it's up to
Yeah,
you, and it's not.
it's not, but it's kind of like it reminds me of the image of like, I have a little boy and sometimes he'll be like, "Come on, dad, let's fight," type of thing just for fun. And I'll put my hand on his head and he'll just like punch the air, right? It's just like wailing at it. And I feel like that's what the higher self does to us sometimes.
Yeah.
That we think that we're like winning the battle and that all the things that have been happening, we don't even realize that the more we judge the stuff that we judge and fight and battle the things that we fight and battle, it only creates more of those things.
Yes. And that was so fascinating in your session, how you were describing that, like what we resist, it shows up all over in her life. What we judge, that's what we see.
What we resist will always persist.
Yeah.
So all the things that we can get stuck into, like being an activist for, we think we're actually helping it. Actually, we're not. We're only creating more of it in our world,
And I
in our
love
own you inverse.
and I love how you were saying, your higher self was saying that we need to love the opposite. So if you haven't gotten, that job, we have to, or we could love that we haven't. We could love, you know, um, the opposite, or what we judge. We could love it, like mean people. I love mean people because they show you the opposite. They teach you the opposite. And it's just like so
Yeah.
many of my clients, that they remember that when they chose this life or they were planning this life, they had all different things they wanted to learn. So they come in with the opposite almost always. It's like some of the most successful people have like a parent that they were never good enough for, or you know, it's always that way. If you want to learn self-love, usually those people come in and they feel like they're really unloved. So it's we have to love that opposite because it teaches us what it is that we really want.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you
Okay,
hear
yeah,
me?
because I had a call come in, and sometimes it makes the microphone switch. It's a
Yeah.
glitch in the Apple software with Riverside. But I totally agree with you. I think we learn in this world through opposites. And the thing that we think we're here to learn, we actually learn through experiencing the opposite of that thing. So if you keep experiencing the same things over and over again, then choose the opposite and understand what that opposite thing is, and that's what actually you're trying to learn. So
Right.
if you're here and you wanted to learn pleasure, what is pleasure? You must experience the fullest extent of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And once
Yeah.
you finally no longer judge negatively pain, then you have finally understood the concept of pleasure.
Yeah. Yes. I
And
love
that's
that.
hard for us to grasp. It's really hard
Yes.
for us to grasp this concept, but it's totally true.
It's totally true.
We'll keep experiencing the same negative experiences that we negatively judge. All the things that we try to fight against will just continue to persist over and over and over again. And they become more and more severe
I
because
agree.
this is the way consciousness wakes us up. It just increases, with the things that you're here to learn, you'll experience the opposite of it until you no longer judge negatively the opposite.
Exactly. And so many times the higher self will say this their patterns or my clients' patterns will stop when they learn it, when they learn the lesson. But what they really mean is when they love the lesson,
That's
when
right.
they accepted it, you know? And and that's so key to really releasing these patterns that people are in because people get the same, crappy boyfriend over and over and over again. And they come to me and they're like, what am I supposed to learn from this? But it's not just
Totally.
learning. It's
You
like
know,
really
it's
embracing it.
it's so true. It's like when you finally realize that everything in your outer world around you is just a reflection of your inner world.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that if you have a relationship that, continues a dynamic that continues to persist with you, then what you have to recognize is that the way those people are treating you is how you treat and see yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what you believe you're worthy of and what you believe you deserve is what you will get.
Yeah.
Until finally you start to fall in love with yourself. And as you fall in love with yourself, the people that manifest into your life are the people that truly love you.
Yeah.
And this is what it means to live in an ascended way. It's not like the duality goes away. The duality plane is still there. All dimensions are within, they're still there. And all the
Hmm.
higher dimensions are here too. It's just that we start to create this new world that represents around us how we see ourselves.
It's so true. It's an internal shift. That's what this
So
is.
even the external exploration of the world around you is really just an internal exploration. And that is awakening.
Yeah.
Awakening to the fact that the world around you is not separate from you, but actually just a reflection of what's inside of you.
Hmm. Yeah. Exactly. And, you know, it was interesting in your session also about the pole shift because I've had other clients talk about this. They the way it seems to be coming across to me is this asteroid. Some of them call it a comet coming, and what that's going to do is really kind of enable the timelines to all split and in that time. And what I've been hearing is that the veil will drop and we'll be able to see into so many different dimensions all at once, in a sense.
Really? So you've been
And
hearing a lot about this asteroid. Some you say are calling a comet, which is a reference to Apophis.
that's what they've been saying. So when your higher self was talking about this, I was really spellbound. I was wondering if you could talk about this more. Have you ever heard this before?
Yes. This part of it I did know about, but new stuff related to this came out during the session. And I think what I talked about that was new, that came out of this, because I've gone back and listened to it a few times now as well, is that the pole shift is representative of the shift within us. So as we shift our poles, right, that we start to understand that, if you think about the chakras going all the way up, each one has this different degree of conditionality versus unconditionality. So love by its very nature is unconditional, but we tend to place condition upon it, right? And so we live in a world of conditional love, which is really a world of judgment, because as soon as you apply conditionality to love, then it's like you get a reward if you do what I want you to do. You don't get a reward if you do what I don't want you to do. And so the root chakra becomes 6 parts judgment or conditional love and 1 part love. The second chakra, the sacral, becomes 2 parts love and 5 parts condition or judgment. The third, the solar plexus, is 3 parts judgment and 4 parts judgment and 3 parts love. And the heart tips the scale, so it becomes 4 parts love and 3 parts judgment.
Oh my gosh.
And so from this is like applying darkness to white light. As you put gradations of darkness through the prism, you can create the full spectrum of color and also the spectrum of the scale of music. So these are all varying degrees of differentiation that we can create through this prism that allows us to see all the zone of color, which is, a very, very small aspect or segment of the visible, the visible spectrum is a tiny, tiny part of the overall electromagnetic spectrum. So this whole concept of conditionality, of love, in order for us to learn truly unconditional love, what are we going to experience our whole lives? Conditional love.
The opposite.
Until we finally learn to accept and love conditional love itself.
Wow.
And then once we finally learn to embrace the notion of conditional love, which is to fall in love with a world full of judgment.
Yeah.
Because we actually understand the reason for that judgment. I wrote down in my iPhone over the weekend, like something I titled The Divine Paradox. And I wrote, judgment is the source of all suffering. Enlightenment is the awareness that suffering is the source of all soul evolution.
Wow. That's incredible. And the higher self has said that in order for us to really transcend ourselves, we have to release these stories about being right. And I love how you are talking about we choose love or being right. We hold on so tightly to judgment and being right. And these stories we tell ourselves over and over again that just injure ourselves over and over again. And if we really get to the root cause of these stories and really listen to what we're saying to ourselves, we can release them out of our consciousness and just let them go and love the experience and let it go.
Yes, Earth is not intended to be an escape room. Earth is intended to be a place that we learn how to transcend duality, because the backdrop itself is duality and conditionality. So we have to learn to unconditionally love the conditional environment around us. And when we do so, then we have learned how to love instead of being right. And that's enlightenment. Enlightenment is when our expression of love supersedes and exceeds our desire for one objective truth. Because we realize now that there's not really a such thing as one objective truth. Right. The facts that we thought we'd collected in our lifetimes are really just facets of a larger prism of truth.
Right.
And not having listened to all of your other QHHT sessions, I'm just curious, how much of what you heard in the session with me is what you hear and is consistent with what you hear in other sessions.
It was very consistent. It was a lot of similar, of course, a lot of new stuff, but it was similar to what I've heard in other sessions. But there were so many instances where, oh well, one thing that you were talking about that was pretty really fascinating was your eye, because when we did this session, you had redness in your eye.
Yeah, I had this strange, like the night before, I must have rubbed my eye or bumped it or something when I was on the boat, and so then I got back to the hotel in Miami, and I looked in the mirror just like I was brushing my teeth, and it was like kind of strangely red. And I was like, "Uh-oh, what's going on?" Like it looked like maybe there was a blood vessel that was bursting. But I woke up in the morning, and my entire eye on one side was completely like red, like blood red. And what's also strange is that after I left Miami and I went to Portugal for the next few days, over the course of the next 5 days, it started to clear up, but it turned into something even more bizarre. So the redness ended up going all the way around my iris. And it looked like when there's an eclipse. And when the sun gets eclipsed and the moon crosses in front of the sun's path, there's a coronal ring that goes around it. That's what happened to my eye. I literally had a coronal ring of fire all around my eye for almost a week. And it didn't look as bad because then the rest of the eye started, getting normal again, and now it's totally back to normal. But it was really mind-boggling because it literally looked like an eclipse. So everyone I talked to when I was in Portugal, they're like, "What's going on with your eye, man?" And it was the weirdest thing. Like it literally was a coronal ring, which is a crown ring. Corona, again, is crown. Coronal ring around my iris. And I've never had that ever in my whole life, anything like that.
And yet it was so symbolic. It made so much sense. And that just ties into what we were talking about before, is what I hear from the higher self is we have to love these physical issues because they're so divinely placed in our lives. They're opportunities to really learn about ourselves. And what the higher self says all the time is like when you really love the physical issue, then it can start to go away because you love it as this divine teacher. And then you get all the messages and you learn from it. And then it goes away on its own because it's given you that opportunity. But we're so used to turning away from those things. We're so used to seeking outside of ourselves and getting a pill for that or whatever. When really it's a teacher so that we can follow it inwards. And the eyes are really special because according to my clients, your iris contains the blueprint of your soul. So all
Yeah.
the rings and lines in your iris, they just show the blueprint of your soul. And when you're communicating with another person, you're projecting through the light of your consciousness, projecting out your eyes, almost like color therapy, and goes into their eyes. And their soul is able to retrieve information from that other person about like where they've been. And sometimes your eyes will change color and it will mean
Yeah.
something. Just
Mine
like,
have. Mine totally changed color. Mine went from being dark brown my whole life to turning like green. Like
yeah,
it's strange. I have like tons of photographs of it, and it's been over the last. It started about a year and a half ago, and then now it's if I showed you pictures of it, it's been a very very dramatic shift, and I
yeah,
didn't even understand why. Why would you go to, kind of like from dark brown eyes, which you can see on my old driver's license and everything. I went to like olive green eyes.
it's really fascinating because this happens to people. And so what has been coming across in my sessions is really fascinating because I always thought that eye color and even your blood type and like freckles or whatever, that was just genetic. But these are clues. They mean something. So
Hmm.
you're projecting certain information and your eye colors will change if you're projecting something else. And the more self-aware you become, a lot of times your eye colors will start to change. But it's interesting. It's very general, but people that in general that have green eyes seem to be projecting information from a higher plane, like many have described, if you want to label it, like they're projecting information from Lyra, it seems. And people with green eyes, green usually symbolizes that they're almost like becoming psychic. And then they
Huh.
have some trouble with electronics sometimes because the more green your eyes are, the harder for this realm of technology because you're projecting information that's of a higher plane, that's of a higher frequency than um, this field here. And then, brown eyes are really fascinating because a lot of times people projecting brown eyes are carrying information from the inner earth or from, ancient wisdom on this plane, and they're projecting it into the other person's eyes. Brown eye people with brown eyes are usually very would consider themselves old souls for the earth plane. But then people that are projecting blue eyes seem to be projecting, of course, this is really general, but they seem to be projecting ancient information from a different place where there's a lot of water. And it's very crystal, if their eyes are very crystal clear, they seem to have already ascended in another plane. But again, all time is happening in the now. So these are other versions of themselves that are having this. So if
Can you
you
see
have,
this?
yeah. Oh, okay. So if your eyes are changing color and your hair changes color, people in general seem to be tapping into this ancient information from when we used to be in the Garden of Eden, and it means something. So back when my clients remember in their memories when they were living in a different plane or like the Garden of Eden, say, that their eyes would change according to the seasons because they were more in tune with the earth. And so essentially, it's usually a clue that someone's projecting if their eyes are changing color because they're getting more in tune with the other version of themselves, which is the earth. So they're tapping back into that higher frequency, so to speak. And
So,
then,
mhm.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say what you see here is a picture of me during Codex filming on top. So that was like in 21.
Oh my gosh.
And then the other picture was from about a year ago. So
That's
the one on
incredible.
the bottom.
Wow. Yeah, people are having are changing.
Hmm.
I think, well, I mean, what you can tell me what you think, but I think it's a sign of you being in alignment with your ascension, basically.
It's so strange you say that. I started looking up this phenomenon about a year ago because I was like, what is this? Why is this happening? And it turns out that there were a lot of people that came back and said, okay, this is what happens and why it happens. I guess it's quite common. I had no idea. I guess it's quite common to occur when you go through like a spiritual awakening.
It is.
Did you know that there's a new love affair with mathematics and geometry happening all around the world today? People who once despised these subjects in high school are now finding they're falling in love with them. Do you know why? Because math without meaning is simply information, whereas math with meaning is divine communication. My courses, The Etymology of Number and The Language of Light, guide you on a journey of self-discovery, sharpening your problem solving and pattern perceiving, as well as analytical and creative thinking, and unlocking your fullest polymathic potential. And most importantly, acquainting you with the mathematical language of the universe itself. You will never see the U inverse the same again. To get started, I recommend The Etymology of Number, a 4-part series that explores the evolution of numbers and their impact on fields like physics, chemistry, music, and art. It is the embodiment of Leonardo da Vinci's encouragement to study the science of art and the art of science. Learn how to see. Realize that everything connects to everything else. My second course series, The Language of Light, is a 6-part series that builds on concepts from the first course and offers deeper insights into unified sciences, ancient wisdom, spirituality, and their relevance to today. My courses are always fun and easy to understand. They intertwine mathematics, music, art, and consciousness, and illuminate the mathematical connections that span all disciplines of science and art. Register for these 2 courses, Etymology of Number and The Language of Light, at robertedwardgrant.com under the Courses tab. And join the Robert Edward Grant community chat on Orion Messenger for lively, engaging, and innovative discourse.
Yeah, it's very common. It's also interesting because a lot of the shamans in some of these places like Costa Rica that have really gotten deeper into their shamanism, they will tell you their eyes change color to be more greenish. So I think it's
Yeah,
really
that's another thing, is that green seems to be more common than the others, especially going from brown to green. And green eyes are losing the melanin. That's what's basically happening. The melanin is basically coming out of the eyes. So that's strange. But I didn't even notice it until my girlfriend basically said it to me, and I was like, she goes, "Wow, your eyes have changed color." And I was like, What are you talking about? And I didn't even notice until then we started taking photographs and stuff and trying to track it. And it was really happening. So, who knows if it continues, but I mean, I even read about some people, their eyes turning to like an amethyst color, like a purple color, which would be kind of bizarre, right? To have like purple eyes.
A lot of the ancient tribes had purple eyes, or people remember this. So that would be interesting. I think there's such a high frequency also hitting the earth that we're almost moving into this higher plane as we're going through the ascension. I think people will start to have purple eyes again.
Interesting. Okay, so what are the other things that are like common denominators that you keep hearing about that are fundamental to this ascension process and what's going to be happening over the course of the next several years? What are you hearing from the other side?
Well, my clients have been talking about this, all this merging of timelines. They consider it like a nexus point is what they've been saying. So they say right now everyone has their own timeline, and it could be different based on what the person believes, because each person has a different belief system, meaning that they would have different reality right now, in a sense. Your reality could be so different than somebody else's. That means that your future could be so different than someone else's right now. But as we continue on this path and we continue to like release different things within ourselves, then there's this potential that this actually will trigger a comet, or a comet is coming, or an asteroid is coming in alignment with this. And if the tail of a comet is what they've been saying, if the tail goes in front of the sun, then it may trigger like a solar flash and dismantle our veil. My clients, when they talk about the planet or the planetary sphere, they consider it a toroidal field. So they say the veil will dismantle and everyone will see into all dimensions at once, and that will create this nexus point. So it was really interesting to hear your session because it was very similar to what I've been receiving. Once we hit this nexus point, then all the timelines merge into 3, and then they shoot out. So the top one seems to be where we, clean up our oceans, and that's the ascension pathway. And it's just absolutely beautiful. And we teach our children how to speak telepathically, and we really evolve, and we choose love over judgment. Then the middle timeline according to my client, seems to go down the same trajectory as the gray extraterrestrials, and we essentially that future timeline we basically modify our
They're gonna go hide inside the earth.
again, yeah, and we eventually lose the planet, have to, get a different version of ourselves from the past and do this all over again. Essentially, a lot of what we're doing is mimicking other civilizations' downfalls that we've experienced before many, many times. We just repeat the same cycle. And then the lower timeline ends on this plane as out of like a contract. And those souls choose another place because there's so many different Earth-like planets. And then they start this process again. But it's all, to learn. There's no doing this wrong. There's nothing you could do wrong. It's just learning, and there's a part of you on every timeline anyway, so it's not like you don't achieve the ascension, which I heard your higher self say that we all must ascend, but
we all will. Mm-hmm.
We all will eventually. But my clients have been talking about us, and I know you are already starting to do this, us becoming more aware of the other versions of ourselves, because essentially your soul splinters into many different fractals to have the most experience it can. And so there's a whole bunch of different Sarahs out there, doing many different things anytime I make a different decision. But what the higher self has been saying is we will become more aware of these other fractals of ourself, and we'll start to have more awareness not only of ourself having an experience that we didn't have here on a different reality, but we'll become more aware of the other realities out there that look totally different of ourself. Because if you think about time, it doesn't exist. So the future you, the future versions of you, like say maybe perhaps like a version of you that's from Arcturus or something, you'll become more aware of the other versions of you, because essentially they consider like extraterrestrials not extraterrestrial at all, most of them, but just other versions of ourselves.
Wow. So could you go back for a second and explain the three different groups?
Sure. So the higher timeline is the people, basically anybody. I mean, don't worry if you're in the wrong timeline.
There's no wrong one.
Right. So these are the people that are really going to learn like telepathy. The higher self says it's so beautiful. They're returning to the Garden of Eden in a sense. The middle timeline goes down the same trajectory as the grays, and after this nexus point, and then the lower timeline ends abruptly. But light workers are, yeah, they do.
Okay.
They don't do well.
So they just end abruptly. That's just it.
Well,
I mean, they just get reincarnated.
They're just not taken off of the planet, of this planetary sphere is what they've been talking about. The very low timeline. Then there's two timelines. So the very low is just not here anymore. After the nexus point, there's three. The lowest go to a different Earth plane. There's already one set up. And the middle timeline goes down the same trajectory as the grays. But here's the thing. There are light workers strategically placed in this one. And all they do is shift the perspective of these people. They shift the perspective and then they move up. So they're just like helping people move up on the middle timeline in a sense.
It's like I guess it's like after school work. It's like summer school. It's like summer school. It's a bonus program to learn about how to reframe judgment.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And experience.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
That's what they're doing. Yeah.
So when you say that the one that ends abruptly, what does that mean exactly? They just are gone from the existence of the other two. They don't see each other anymore. It's like bye-bye.
They don't see the higher timeline at all. They don't even know that it's happening.
They don't know even that it exists or anything. They have no clue that it exists.
They don't see it. They just think, they just see more of the negative timeline. They see more of what they're judging, in a sense. They'll see more and more and more of that until they pass. Because according to the higher consciousness, when you pass, everyone can see what's happening on this planetary sphere from that perspective. Now souls can see and they can do this again. So before, you couldn't really see when you pass what was really happening on this planet.
So, you know what's interesting? This is exactly how Leonardo da Vinci described it.
Oh, that
He
is
says there are three types of people: those who can see, those who see once shown by others, and those who simply don't see.
That's exactly what it is. It's three timelines like that. And those who don't see at all don't see. And it's really interesting. That is exactly what it is.
So the highest timeline then is going to be the people who choose love, not judgment. They'll learn how to reframe their existence and fall in love with it just as it is. And then that creates a whole different, like, magical kind of life experience. And I'll tell you, that feels like what I've been living for the last year and a half to 2 years.
Maybe that's why your eyes turned green.
Maybe. I can tell you, though, it's like I'm definitely on a different path. Like, places I go, all of a sudden, it's like always magical and idyllic. I don't have to work as much anymore. Like, I've been on so much vacation this year. Right? I've traveled all around the world. I've literally been all over the place. And then now it's like I just had some very lucky windfalls.
That's awesome.
And it's so strange because, like, I was in Thailand and I was saying to myself, you know what? I don't want to work as much anymore. Like, and I don't want to believe anymore that I have to continue to work so much in order to succeed.
Yeah.
And I'd already, like, crossed that transit, many times over the years, but now it's like completely a different frame, completely different scale of it. And even the people, like, I don't get triggered anymore when someone will say something really mean or negative to me or something like that. I just kind of just like think, okay, no big deal, right? I'm not attached to having to, like, protect my name or protect my integrity or protect anything because I can just be authentic. When you're entirely authentic, you don't have to protect anything.
Yeah.
Except maintaining your freedom and authenticity. That's it.
I learned that a long time ago. I just tell people everything about myself. There's no hiding.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's why I think you and I are similar this way, Sarah, that you wanted to be this, upstanding psychologist who would be recognized probably academically. And I'm sure you would have done well in that life too. And it's the same thing with me. At a certain point in my life, that's what I wanted. I chose a path of life that was kind of like the path that people in the traditional world would want to aspire toward. But what's interesting is that we both went down entirely different paths from that.
Yeah.
We're still those people. And I have no shame in my game of having been that person, having been a pharmaceutical CEO. None whatsoever. It was the path I chose. And again, learning to fall in love with the path that I chose has been the most powerful aspect of my awakening that I could ever express to you. And being able to feel, because I think that's the things that I used to do. I used to hide my feelings a lot more. I used to have in fact, one of the things I used to do is I used to have very different social media approaches to my LinkedIn, my Instagram, right? My Facebook. It was like every one of them were entirely different.
Me too.
And then one day I was like, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. It's too complicated to think, wait, I put the wrong, like, sacred geometry post on my LinkedIn page. Right?
Yeah.
I realized one day I just had to merge all of it and just be authentic with everyone and be the same with everyone. And that was probably about 3 years ago that shift happened. And I talked to my, social media team and I was like, okay, guys, you can post anything, because they were spending so much time just parsing it out, You can post anything on any platform that I post or that you post. It could go across the board on everything. And they're like, well, what about all the healthcare people that see that you're doing all this kind of, like, weird esoteric stuff? I'm like, so?
Yeah.
So the question is, when are we willing to just be ourselves without
That's really
protecting anything?
it's really the question.
I think that is really an important aspect of it. And then learning to just fall in love with the whole thing, even the challenges. Now I have a challenge come up for me and I'm like, okay, this is cool. New level of the game. So
Yeah.
how am I going to reframe how I perceive this so that it turns out to be the best thing that ever happened? And so life then became a series of unlearning and reframing.
Yeah.
How I looked at everything. And that shifted things, but now it's definitely a different level. Like, it's things have dramatically shifted. And I started to kind of go, wait a minute, why do I keep getting like awards and stuff for stuff I don't even really, it's the weirdest thing. Like I kept getting more and more kind of recognition. And this is a time in my life when I really desire no recognition. And maybe that's why, maybe that's exactly why.
That's exactly
Because the
why.
things that we seek are elusive to us
That's
until we're
exactly.
just totally content with what we already have. And once we fall in love with the current state we're in, then the universe just gives you more and more of that. However we're feeling is what the universe gives us more of. Because it's a U inverse. It's a mirror of our consciousness. It's a mirror of self-reflection.
And
And I
that
think that's
is
one of the things that came out in the session with
you
you.
did.
You asked the question, why? Why does the one source creator have to divide itself? And I said, because it can't perceive itself. That's what came through. It can't perceive itself. A knife can't cut itself, and an eye can't see itself without the aid of a mirror. And that was a very, very specific addition. An eye cannot see itself without the aid of a mirror. Well, what does a mirror do? It separates the image. Right? It creates a reflection. It also creates an absorption. The mirror is a mirror of reflection and absorption. So we have a mirror between our conscious mind and our subconscious mind. And that's the zone we live at. And that's where the prism of light goes through and gives us, through differing degrees of judgment, all the duality that we experience around us. And it's a kaleidoscope of absolute magnificent beauty. It's this right here.
Yeah.
The masculine merging with the feminine at this point of the mirror and then creating its own differentiation between absorption and reflection. They come together, but we perceive it as separate.
Right. Right.
And this to me is like such a beautiful aspect of the world because your entire experience shifts when you realize this.
Your entire life shifts. You ascend when you really realize this. Because by fully loving the opposite,
Mm-hmm.
you really merge with your true self. You merge with source. I think it's the
Yeah, because now
key.
you're seeing it just as source sees it.
Yeah, you
Because source
are.
doesn't see the
With
separation.
no judgment.
And I could tell when you asked the question, how do the people that are in the ascended ranks, right? Those that are going in this first categorization that you just referenced, and you said, how do they see? It's 11:37 right now, by the way, just so you know, that's that special number 137. But how do they feel about the people that are in the lower dimensional frame? And the answer that came through, and it was kind of shocking for me too, because even listening to it, it was not how I would have answered it, to be honest. But after I thought about it for a minute, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the only way it could be. And you said, how do they feel about the people in lower dimension, like the people that they should be fighting and stuff like that? I'm like, they love them. They love them. They're so grateful to them because it's through them that they're actually able to experience the ascension.
Yeah.
They've volunteered to do this.
Right. It's through our negative experiences that we're able to grow. It really shifts how you look at life when you really love it, the negative experiences.
So how much of this session that we had together, how has this changed how you look at the world?
A lot, tremendously. tremendously. Not only is there an energy that comes from listening to this session, but I feel like a new understanding of my life. Like I started to incorporate a lot of these things that came through your session, and it helps me really see things so differently and clearly. I mean, I always felt like I had to like kind of seek approval.
Oh, oh, I love that. I love the feeling behind what you just said. I feel it.
And now it's like I don't. I have to just see myself, see approval. I don't have to seek it.
That's
It's
beautiful.
it's right there. It's just for
That's so
me
beautiful,
to
Sarah.
turn
That is really
inwards, not
cool.
out.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And it's wow. That's so wow. Because even for me, I mean, I'm listening to this session, I would say 80% of it, because, and people probably, I think there was one person that commented on the session that said, oh, I know when someone's being hypnotized, and this is too similar to what Robert already says. And it made me think and reflect for a moment. I wasn't bothered by that. I wasn't bothered by it at all. I mean, the session was entirely authentic, and I know what we experienced. And, even down to the I discussion and what was that representing and
No.
all of that. And I started to really contemplate. I'm like, well, why? Maybe there are some things that were similar to what I would normally say, although many of them were said differently. But I realized, I'm like, well, all the stuff that I've been saying, I came to these realizations as if they were channelings even then.
Right?
So as I'm just going through life and coming to these realizations of what life is and what it's about and how you get the most benefit by being in this world of duality, by being disappointed, by experiencing heartbreak. You realize that the heart never really breaks, only the ego does.
It's so true. That's so true. Only the ego does.
And so then I started realizing, wow, everything that I identified with, the people that get bothered by things, that get insulted, get offended, their ego is totally in control and in self preservation mode.
Mm, yeah.
Because the person that's truly of an evolved mind and spirit doesn't get bothered by anything. He just realizes, oh, okay, why did I choose this? What was I intending to learn? What is this experience for me? And how can I fall in love with it even more?
Love that. I love that so much.
It's the alchemy when we start realizing, I think this is the real meaning behind alchemy all along, which is the suffering and the difficulty is the gold of soul evolution.
Yes.
That's the thing. It's like, oh, duh, that's why we're here. We're here to learn how to ascend, and we need the backdrop of this. We can't just learn it in a school of didactic. And there's some people that think, oh, this place would be so much better if everything were just done for us and everything was just automatic and I wouldn't have to do anything. And then you go back to like Paradise Lost and Milton, right? And Dante's Inferno and all these stories that go through, the period of time when Lucifer was supposedly accused of taking the 1/3 of the host of heaven down to, down to hell. And the plan in the story of Paradise Lost is that, Lucifer said, hey, I'll make sure everybody's saved. I'll make sure that everything is done for them. We won't have to do any work. It's going to be great. And in this story, you realize that that's not the way that our experience would be maximized.
It's not. And other versions of ourselves, like other beings on these higher realms that come through my clients, say that it's bliss all the time. But there's no growth in that. They say that we're lucky. And you know what they say our job is? Is to be messy. They say that's the beauty of humanity. They're messy. They don't have anything together. And that's what makes them so beautiful. It's the journey. Like when Dolores has come through some of my sessions and I get really excited and I'm like, oh my gosh, Dolores, I'm working on this. Can you help me with this? The answer is always no, because it's the beauty is in the journey, the uncovering. That's why I came here, is to uncover it. Otherwise I would just be able to like, it wouldn't be, I wouldn't learn it greater if I didn't have this journey. It would just
Well, what's
be
so epic about this too is that how cool is it that we think that our life is like a book,
there. Yeah.
right? We think our life is like a book that hasn't been written yet.
Yeah.
But the truth, and so we make decisions and hopefully don't make mistakes, because then that'll screw up the book.
Right. We want to
And
arrive
that's how we look
safely
at a
to death.
life well lived. My epitaph is going to be my book. And my book is, what kind of life did he live? And okay, I've gotten past it. Maybe the early stage of it, you worry about how you're going to die. And then in a later stage in life, you start realizing you transcend that. And so you start thinking, oh, it's not important how we die because everybody dies. And you get to 50 years old and you have to start thinking that way, because you're like, okay, I'm past the midpoint. Okay. I've got less time here. And now, even my parents, they reckon their time by the number of summers they may still experience.
Wow.
Right. Because, they're in their 80s now. So they're like, okay, how many more summers am I going to have?
Hmm.
And
Wow.
that's when you're starting to really get stuck in this idea of scarcity in a way.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so what happens is we all kind of fall into this trap of thinking that there's this limitation and we have to write the book in the very best way we can. Otherwise, we're going to make mistakes and end up in jail, or we're going to end up doing something wrong and we're not going to be able to rot out our salvation, or we're going to end up going to hell, and that's just a different type of jail. But what an incredible thing to realize that it's not a book, it's a chapter. And that all of the chapters are running simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all interconnected and they're all working together. All the versions of you in your different lifetimes are all literally working together to bring about your highest soul evolution. And then you start realizing that you're a multidimensional being. You live across thousands and thousands and thousands of years of space-time simultaneously. And you have the ability to tap into all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And literally travel through time. And I know I've experienced it. Even the things that I learned in other lifetimes, people ask me, how did you learn how to do this? Or how did you learn how to do that? Or how did you learn geometry so quickly? I went from I didn't do any geometric drawings or work until 2018. And then in the space of 4 years, I become like the most followed person in geometric art and geometry in the world. Really? That's when you know that you're in a matrix of your own mind. And that I was discovering new shapes altogether that had never been perceived before. And publishing these findings. And then I write a book in math that becomes the #1 selling book in Amazon in mathematics and geometry. Really? You think this is real? Because I don't. It's not.
It's not.
But it's the soul journey that I chose. And my life is now, I wanted to sculpt, and all of a sudden I start sculpting. And the first one, I'm like getting an award for it. And it was like, how? Because I remembered doing it in my past lives. I knew what to do.
Yeah.
The same was true with math and geometry and physics and chemistry and everything else that I got really, really deep into. I was just remembering it. So we could say that all learning is really just remembrance.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things that came out in the session too, that consciousness divides itself through a series of forgettings. And that's how it perceives itself. That the masculine can perceive its masculine nature by forgetting the feminine aspect within itself. Didn't you find that interesting? That was totally new. That was like, what? Where did this come from?
That was mind blowing to me.
Yeah, I was like, what? I mean, I'd never talked about that before or anything. And then I started thinking, okay, well, if what we call learning is really just a series of forgetting so that we can experience what it's like not to know, and you think about it, when you're omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent, you know everything.
Yeah.
So the only way you can experience something for the first time is to forget what you know.
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
have to create a veil of forgetfulness. You have to forget. You have to put a veil between each of your lifetimes to forget each of those lifetimes. And then you would slowly bring it back by raising your consciousness. And then you start to realize, wait, I'm a superhero. And that's the best part in every superhero movie is when the superhero gets bitten by a spider or, something happens where he realizes that he's got superpowers or she realizes she has superpowers. That's the best part of the movie, of every superhero movie. That's the stage we're in right now.
Yep. We're
We're
becoming
finding within ourselves all these things we forgot.
It's amazing. It is an initiation. That's what the higher self says. That you just become an initiate. First, you start seeing signs, and these signs and clues are from you. You're just on this path to remember. And then when you go down the initiation process, it's almost like this fun game. Everyone experiences that. The more to the degree where they allow it, basically, when they surrender to it, then more opens up and they see more and more. And essentially, we're journeying back to ourselves, to that awakened human. It's so exciting that we're on this path and this trajectory.
Yeah. So you realize that the book is already written.
Yeah.
But the thing that's most interesting about it is it's how
It's
you
written,
perceive
but
it
it's
is
writing. It's
still where you are in that moment of your own conscious evolution. So the things that you want as you evolve also evolve. You no longer want the things that you wanted before,
mm-hmm.
right? So, for example, for me, at one point in my life, I wanted, I wanted to build, an empire in business. I wanted to like leave my mark and do all these things in the world and be successful in business. And I did that. But now that's totally not what I want. The greatest joy I get is by learning how to raise my own awareness and opening up to feel and understand how other people are feeling and understand. These are the things that I get the most value from. The ability to teach and to raise consciousness. It's not about giving someone a fish, it's about teaching people how to fish.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like the teaching of how to fish now is not about teaching them how to do business. It's not about, although that has some aspect of it that's still going to always be there. But for me, the value of it is more helping people see how to reframe their experience to change their perception and thereby transform their world of experience. That's the thing that's most important to me now. And yet, it's like the more I embrace that aspect of my North Node, which is Pisces, it is to be the wisdom teacher, the more I embrace that, the more everything else becomes easy, even the business. I don't need to suffer as much anymore. The moment that we embrace the opposite that is causing us the suffering is the moment we no longer need to suffer from that thing because we have learned and integrated it.
Yeah.
Let me repeat that. The moment that we embrace the thing that we believe is causing us the suffering and fully accept it and fall in love with it is the moment we no longer need to continue to experience that same type of suffering because we've fully integrated it and learned it. This was a big revelation for me. A big, big revelation for me. And sometimes it comes down to just deciding I'm not going to treat myself this way anymore because I understand why I did it and it was great. I got the benefit from it. I learned from it.
Yeah.
And everything was in divine timing. And so this has been such a beautiful journey for me, and this whole experience with you. And I'm excited to do more with you because
Me
I
too.
feel like we didn't get to finish that
We just
discussion.
scratched
So
the
we're gonna
surface.
we barely scratched the surface, and I think there's so much more yet to be learned. I feel like now I'm on this life adventure. Here I just got back from Thailand, and I was in Brazil a few months before, and it was like a magical, mystical journey, where I ended up discovering, and even the archaeologists recognized this from there, that we discovered an Orion's belt across three large megalithic sites that no one knew were actually connected in the shape of Orion's belt. And what's fascinating about it is that it's not only there. Then a month later, I found myself in Scotland, also experiencing another Orion's belt that happened to be on Castle Grant property in Scotland. I was there with Matthias at Clavicairn, which is a very famous time-space portal. And then I went to Kopangan, Thailand, and right next to the hotel I was staying at, we discovered another three megalithic sites that were the exact shape of Orion's belt and that were covered with etchings and carvings that looked like Indian. And I was like, what the heck is going on here? And one of them was shaped like a brain and had a crack right down the center that they lit up at night with purple light down the crack. So it looks just like a crown chakra awakening.
Wow. And my clients describe like Orion's belt as a stargate, or basically that's why it's aligned with the pyramids, because there's a stargate that opens. They also don't describe stars as just stars. They say they're portals, and we're all tethered to a specific portal. That's where we pretty much are able to enter this planetary sphere. And you can tell which one you're tethered to by which one calls your attention most. But many ancient societies, in their memories, they remember always saying they came from Orion's belt. Many,
Well, and that came out in our session too.
yeah,
And
that
that
was
was a total surprise to me that, coming down into the world, you asked what it was like to come in here. And I said, oh, you come through the Orion's gate. And the
yeah.
Orion's gate is Almanac. It's the central star in the Orion's belt. And the shape of the three stars, right, it kind of looks like this. You could see it like this, where it goes one here like the pyramid, another one here, and then another one down like this. Well, actually, this is also the shape. If you just pull it up like this, it goes like this,
Oh,
right?
like it's a pyramid.
It's like a pyramid, but it's also a third eye because we have alpha and omega, which is the masculine and feminine, the left and right brains, and then the third eye right in the center. That's the Orion's gate. It's the X. And that's what turns on the X inside our brain. The X inside our brain is the optic chiasm, where the right eye anatomy connects to the left brain, the occipital lobe, and the left eye connects to the right occipital lobe through the optic nerve. And they cross over right at the pituitary gland, which is where the crown chakra happens.
Wow. Oh, I didn't
So
know
it's
that.
literally alpha, the linear thought, omega, the irrational thought, which is the creative mind, the right brain, if you're right-handed, crossing over at the chi, the corpus callosum, and this becomes the ability for the brain to feel and the heart to think. So when the heart thinks and the mind feels, that's when the river of wisdom flows. Being able to see equally with both eyes, right? So this Orion's Gate portal, which is right at this Almanac star, is a reference to the global third eye awakening. The reference for all of us to understand who we are, why we're here, what the experience actually is. And for those that have chosen their soul journey to ascend, will ascend. And it's made possible by those who don't, because still everything has to remain in balance.
It's so amazing. It's so beautiful. It's like such an exciting journey that we're all on.
It
This
is a journey
awakening of
that we're all
consciousness.
on. I mean, It's so funny. So I was then after I left Copenhagen, discovered this. I was like, "What the heck? I mean, what are the chances?" And I've got all these pictures, and I'll share them eventually. Then I went to Bali, and I decided to go visit with my girlfriend Tanalo, which is this place that's it's at the it's like three temple sites, and they're on jutting out like small peninsulas that basically stick out, and they also make a perfect Orion's belt. And these temples are black temples. They're actually made of black stone. I'd never seen black temples before, but there they can make this black stone because the sand on the beaches in Bali is black, and when the sunlight hits it, it looks like crystal. It's really beautiful. It's like I've never seen anything like this. Like really, really pretty. So then they made bricks and mortar out of the sand on the beaches, and they made these beautiful temples. And the three temples were there. So I was there with my girlfriend, who's a DJ, well-known DJ. Her name is Dear Jade, and she basically says, "Oh, let's walk over to this place." And so we're walking over, and there's a play going on. There's a play, and it's beautifully enacted, and they're making all this weird sound and everything, because I'd never heard anything like this before. And we walk in, and the play that they're enacting is a play about Rama and Sita. Rama and Sita. Rama and Sita. Okay?
I mean, you can't make this stuff up.
So the higher self is the undivided one. It's the Thoth, right? The lower self becomes Ra or Orion. These are all just different names of the same thing. So the higher self is Metatron, the lower self is Orion. And Orion, just like Osiris, gets stuck in the Duat and ends up getting reincarnated through time over and over and over again, until he learns to fall in love with the place just as it is, instead of fighting it.
That's what we're doing.
So the story of Rama and Sita is the story of these two that lived in heaven, and then they divided themselves to come down to experience. And Sita turns herself into a golden deer. A golden deer. This is what we walked into. And Rama is basically a hunter. So he's running around in this play with the bow and arrow, trying to capture the golden deer, because he's trying to re-merge, right? He thinks he has to conquer the deer to merge with the deer, get the energy and the spirit of the deer. This is the same story that's basically been repeating over and over and over again. It's Orion and Artemis. You could literally watch this thing over and over and over again. And so I was at Gaia this weekend, and I met this guy named Neelish, who does all this work on yugas and, analysis of the long periods of time, et cetera. And what was fascinating about it is I said, hey, the story of Rama and Sita, that's the story of Orion and Artemis. It's the same story. He goes, yes, it is. It's exactly the same story over and over and over again. And that's why, even in the story in the Greek mythology where you have Apollo convinces Artemis to shoot the arrow at the swimming Orion, because she doesn't know that it's her lover that's swimming. She just thinks it's some target. And Apollo was jealous of her love for Orion, that he challenged her and says, oh, you're not such a good archer that you could hit that far distant thing in the water over there. And she does, and it kills him. And it turns him into a constellation. That's how he becomes a constellation, the Orion constellation in the story. This metaphorical story is the story of how the ego of Apollo, which is Ra, god of the sun, right, basically destroyed himself. It was just another reincarnation of himself. It's the story that just keeps repeating over and over and over again, how ego wins out, how ego wins out, how ego wins out, because so often we choose to be right rather than just to love.
Yeah.
And that's the great lesson. The only thing we're here to learn is how to love and how to be loved in return. It's not here to conquer. It's not here to control. It's here to learn how to surrender, fall in love with this existence just as it is, and then you enter paradise. That's how you transcend it.
Yeah, and release our stories that we tell ourselves over and over again about how we are right, and instead just accept, embrace the exactness of what really happened and love it. so that we can really transcend this plane of duality.
Absolutely. And of course I was laughing because, the story of Orion is the story of the hunter who falls in love with the deer. And what a strange paradox that actually is.
Yeah.
And Leonardo da Vinci drew it in the painting that he did of Ophiuchus, who was actually Asclepius, the person who saves Orion when Orion gets stung by a scorpion. He gets stung by a scorpion, and the Scorpio is exactly opposite Orion in the night sky. So the legend has it that Zeus put the scorpion exactly opposite Orion because, he wasn't supposed to be stung by him again. But what was it that saved Orion's life? Ophiuchus, which is actually right above the Scorpius constellation, Scorpio. And so the foot that was stung would have had to have been Ophiuchus foot, not the foot. And he's the serpent bearer. He's one that holds the serpents, that represents the Kundalini life force. So Asclepius apparently saves Orion because Orion gets stung by a scorpion. And most people don't know that scorpion venom is actually one of the most powerful drugs for ego death. And
Wow.
that in Afghanistan, it sells for $39 million for 1 gallon of scorpion venom because it's used to dissolve the ego. It's like Bufo, squared.
That's really
And they smoke it.
That's
So
interesting.
this becomes an ego death. So what Orion went through was the ego death. And he gets saved because he has a Kundalini awakening. And also in the Rama and Sita story, it's a feathered serpent that saves him. Same thing. This is the same story told over and over and over again until finally he wakes up and then drops the illusion and he realizes that this is all a play with himself. And that's what we're all living. We're all on our own hero's journey, living this same story with different backdrops, different scenes, set changes, everything, until we finally learn how to fall in love with it just as it is.
Yeah. Oh my
And then
gosh.
we experience what it's like to be back in heaven. That we never left the Garden of Eden. It was just our perception that shifted.
I mean, imagine if we just looked at life that way. If we loved every negative experience, if we loved every negative or every challenge, and we just saw it as something we loved, our life would just shift so much. It wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be a struggle. It would be so different.
Well, isn't it funny, though, too? Think about it. When we die, we can't wait to come back.
I know. It's so funny. That's what the higher self says. They say you know everything again, and you want to have that experience of remembering it. You want that. You want to be in this plane of forgetfulness. That's what they say.
It
Yeah, and
reminds me of when I went to Africa and I was chased by this herd of elephants. I almost died. And I was on a wet horse and no saddle, no stirrups, no nothing. And when you get chased by 30 elephants at near 30 miles an hour, because that's how fast they can run. I mean, they're in their 20s, like a hippopotamus is super fast too. They can get up to like 28 miles an hour. You're on a horse that's totally wet because I was riding on its back across a river. And then we got between a mother and its calf and got chased by these elephants. And when we finally made it back to the camp, the elephants gave up chasing us. I was like, wow, that was amazing. I've never felt more alive in my whole life.
oh my god,
It's like going on the most incredible roller coaster ride,
I was
It's like,
freaked out.
yeah, oh yeah. Well, I mean, we were freaked out. There was like, that was so real. It was like, wow, real. And what we're doing, think about it. We've created this backdrop where there is a physical death, but none of it's really real.
Right, but none of it's real. That's such a good point. And then when you're running away, it's like, wow, you feel so alive because you're so in that moment, escaping. And
Absolutely.
that is what we're doing. We're
The
like
paradox is so
breathing
real
in
though for us, right? It's like we just want it to be material and objective. We want the world to be material and objective, and it is anything but. It is mental and subjective.
Yeah.
Your entire experience. So this is how history changes. We can change history. History becomes the the space-time memory is really the collection of all of our emotional states from our perceptions.
I loved that. That feelings, when your higher self said feelings are our payload, that
Yeah.
it's all feelings. And then the higher self the source learns through our feelings, our emotional states.
It collects all those feelings to expand its own empathy, which is like this super important thing to wisdom.
Yeah,
That is wisdom.
that
Being
was
able to feel and experience every possible circumstance and every conditioning bias that derives those circumstances. And it becomes more and more intelligent. It becomes the ultimate philosopher. And it's a never ending, infinite thing. The one's exploration and understanding that it has to divide itself to perceive itself. And the more divisions of itself that it makes, it informs more and more of its own record of what it is. It gets to learn more about itself through our eyes. And it's so beautiful. That means every one of us has a purpose. Every
yeah.
one of us has to play this part. And it's such an amazing thing because when you start thinking in those terms, then you start seeing the world as Source Creator does.
You do. Yeah, you really do. It changes everything.
And no one's better than anyone else. No one of us is any better than anyone else. Everyone's got an equal amount of darkness and an equal amount of light. Just some people are aware of it and some people are not.
Right.
Because it depends on where they are in the stage play. What's the script say for them? And then all the things that we thought were suffering and terrible, with the new context of the divine aspect of why it's all happening, suffering, at least when we understand the meaning behind it, no longer is suffering.
Right. It isn't.
So when we can look back on it, then we can start to say, wow, that was such an amazing experience.
And I love how you said how your higher self said that we shouldn't ask why did that person experience that, but why did the higher self choose that for that person? And it really helps you shift the perspective. How am I to learn from this experience and surrender to that? I think it's really beautiful and exciting. I,
It's like looking at the world through new glasses.
yeah.
You know, I'm going to Burning Man for the first time next week. I've never been to
Oh,
Burning Man.
fun. I've never been
So I've got
either.
like all these cool like glasses.
I still think you should have worn an eye patch when you had a red eye. That was my.
Well, if I had an eye patch, I would have worn an eye patch. But you know, there was no time to get an eye patch. I mean, where do you go buy an eye patch?
What are you going to wear
Right.
for Burning Man?
I've got
You get to
a
dress up.
whole wardrobe of Burning Man stuff, which is like I don't even know how I'm going to get all this stuff there. I guess luckily Shervin's got an RV, and I'm going to put it in the back of his RV. He's taking
Cool.
it from here to there. I have an RV there, but it's going to be quite an experience. I'm actually speaking at 3 different times at a few camps. So that'll be interesting also. I don't know what to expect because I've never been, but I think it's going to be epic. I have a feeling it's going to be really cool. And I can't get away from the analogy also and metaphor of Burning Man being Vitruvian Man.
Oh my gosh. Of course you're going there right now.
Think
It
about
makes
it. I mean,
sense.
he
It
starts out
makes
with his
sense.
arms like down, and then he gets his arms up, and they burn him, right?
Right. Right.
And that's burning is like the spirit of God. That's the fire of the sheen.
Right.
The sheen is the fire. It's the Hebrew symbol that is the shape right here.
Mhm.
And this is also the symbol that they did, the Berakat Kohanim. These are the priests inside the Solomon's temple. They all put their hands like this, right? And the sheen symbol represents the fire, the spirit.
It's going to be interesting to see what you find out when you're there because obviously you're supposed to go. Obviously you're supposed to, speak there. So it'd be interesting to find out what revelations come from that.
Yeah,
Seeing
I
as
mean,
how everything is so symbolic these days.
everything is so symbolic. And, I start to wonder, did all these things always exist around me and I was just ignoring them before? Because I thought they were entropic and I believed in coincidences. maybe, what we call coincidence is just our inability to see the pattern that's underlying it, and
Right?
that
It's all
everything is patterned.
everything. Everything is a pattern. Everything. It's so fascinating. It's exciting. I
It
can't wait to
absolutely
find
is. So in our next
out.
session, what would you like to talk about?
Oh, I'm really curious about your past life. I think if we go deep into one of your past lives, we can see the clues that that past life kind of hid for you to find. I think that would
I've
be
been able
really,
to access I've been able to access about 30 of my past lives.
but
I
you'll be
actually
able to really,
remember and I can tap into them.
that'll be great because you'll be able to really focus in on one and you'll be able to really retrieve a lot of information. But I absolutely really want to speak again with the higher self because so much profound wisdom came through. And I think that was just the beginning of more
Yeah.
to come.
Yeah, I got that sense too, and it's been interesting for me to see people's reactions. I was looking at it on YouTube
People
just
are
to see.
so great. I mean, first of all, it was so nice of you to share something like that. Just to help. You didn't want anything in return. I mean, to help so many people like that is just really kind of you
I
to
feel
do.
like it's people ask me all the time, how do you succeed in social media? What is it? And for me, I never tried to get. It wasn't like I was trying to get followers. I just started sharing my work in geometry as I would start getting it. I would literally just put it out there right away because I felt like in order for me to embed this evolutionary path within my own consciousness, I needed to share it because the teacher always learns the most.
This is
So it
so
was a selfish thing. I wanted to learn on my own. I wanted to embed the knowledge. And so I'd be forced to write it down in a way that was as cogent and simplistic as possible so that I'd have a record of it, like a blockchain, right?
yeah.
In a way of this space time memory and also recording all the emotions that I felt through it. And then as I did that more and more, it just started attracting a crowd. And the crowd just got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until finally I realized the crowd is just another aspect of me
Yeah.
because it's me. It represents me starting to fall in love with me without condition.
Exactly. That's exactly what just started doing. I mean, the higher self said just write all this stuff down, and when I'm writing it down, I learned so much about all this information. And then the higher self said, if I want to help people, just write it down, and each person that's drawn to it, or each person that needs to learn the information, will be drawn to the book and the book will work with them to help them heal. And they don't have to do anything. They just absorb this information when they read it. So it was me selfishly wanting to learn, wanting to help people. That was just my intention. And I never tried. I never even tried to get on Gaia either. That happened by accident. I never have tried. I just had the intention of wanting to help people and for myself to learn more.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how I felt too. Like exactly the same. I think if you go on to social media trying to get followers, you have a hard time finding it because it's another seeking rather than seeing.
Yeah, yeah.
The whole path of ascension is such a beautiful path, and you realize that every single thing that you've lived has already been divine. Orion is unique. No algorithms, no propaganda, and no exploitation. Just end-to-end quantum secure data. Messages, groups, and shared media behind a wall of next generation encryption.
Oh, I
And
love that.
it's beyond description.
I
So
love
I
that.
feel like this next few years is going to be really beautiful. And one of the things I talked about also that came out in the session was aging backwards.
Yes. And did you see someone commented, you do look like you're aging backwards. You
Yeah.
do. look
I,
like you're
I was
aging backwards.
I was saying that you know, in the next dimension, and when you're in the fifth dimension, you'll age until 35 years old, and then if you're older than 35 already, when you go into it, then you reverse back to 35. And if you're younger and born in that dimension, then you'll end up growing up until 35. And that 35 is the age of the adult.
That was really interesting. I mean, I
And
had heard that
Mhm.
people look younger, but no one has given like an actual number.
Well, the 35 is important because that's the age that we literally all, until 35, we have more hair follicles, more cell proliferation, right, in our bodies. And then right at 35 is when you start losing new hair follicles. So you have less hair follicles for the rest of your life. And that's, for the people that are like, well, what about people that go bald? Well, if you've ever noticed, people that go bald very often end up with, a lot more hair follicles. Not always the case, but they end up with a lot more just showing up in different places. So it's like my brother is like that, right? He's kind of balding and he's kind of very hairy. So
That's
he's
fun.
and I'm the opposite. I have like no body hair. That's why I'm not, going bald, thankfully. But the point being that we will continue to increase the number of hair follicles until that age. And that becomes the Maginot line between, reaching adulthood. So that's kind of the idealistic age in the fifth dimension.
That was really fascinating. It was also really fascinating that as you move into higher realms, you can't perceive the lower. I mean, as you move into higher realms, you can perceive
You can.
anything which you're at a vibration of or below, but the lower realms can't really see you. So I think that's also in line with when my clients are seeing extraterrestrials or interdimensionals, they see that which they are, like their frequency. So they'll see the version of themselves that they're able to perceive in that kind of timeline in a sense. But they can't see much higher than that because they're not able to perceive it.
We don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are.
Yeah, that was really interesting to me.
So, in order for you to perceive something, your retina and your eye and your brain, the processor, has to be resonating at the frequency of that which you're observing.
Wow. Yeah.
This is why people in the fifth dimension can see others and other things in the fifth dimension, and why people in the fourth dimension can't see things in the fifth dimension. But
Yes.
it's not like it's a line that one day to the next you can all of a sudden see everything in the fifth dimension. It's almost like clouds. Some days it's cloudy, some
Yeah.
days it's not so cloudy. So some days you can see with clarity into the higher dimension. And some days it's just more challenging. It also has a backdrop of where the astrological alignments are at that time, has an impact on your ability to see clearly. But now everyone's going to start being able to see more clearly.
Yeah, everyone will. There's so much light hitting this planet. And we're also shifting our perspective, but there is pretty much light coming through, the central sun. And that's another reason why the higher self keeps saying go outside without your contacts or get a little unfiltered light, because light is coming through the portal of the sun and going straight through our unfiltered eyes into our pineal gland, and it's downloading information and shifting our perspective. And we're being broadcast light in that way, and broadcast light up from the inner earth. And also, even in a weird way, we're being receiving light through our cell phones and tablets. And that's actually helping us in some sense. It's
Yeah,
rewiring.
I see cell phones as like, it's like training wheels for telepathy.
Yeah, it is. And it's training wheels for instant manifestation too.
Absolutely.
So nothing is all bad in this universe at all.
No, even things like we're talking about, if you're raising your frequency enough, every single thing that we experience, it doesn't matter what it is, has equal part dark and light. What
Yeah.
you believe it will be is what will manifest. So if you judge it as having darkness and being really negative, the outcome of that thing for you ingesting it or you utilizing it is going to be negative. If
Yeah.
you believe it's going to be positive, then it will be positive. It doesn't matter what it is. And this is one of those points that I think is so critical because it raises, again, the specter on changing our viewpoint of what the world is and ridding our minds of the negative judgments.
Yeah.
Reframe, reframe, reframe. And
Yeah.
as you reframe the context of everything, then everything, you'll get the positive benefit related to that thing.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Just reframing your whole life to see the positive, and it will just shift everything in your life. It'll probably even shift your health as well, because you'll see your illnesses and issues as being such a gift.
So if you reframe the world experience into one of love, that you're perceiving love all around you, the universal principle will then result in giving you more of what?
Love.
Love.
Yeah. That's
If you
beautiful.
perceive the world around you as a world of hatred and acrimony and apathy, then what will the universe give back to you through its mirror reflection?
The
More
same.
hatred, more acrimony, right? And more apathy.
So true.
So the dissension is going to be in choosing one side. The moment we choose one side of anything is the moment we've already lost, because we can now no longer choose to frame into the positive context. So
Oh my gosh. I love that.
the people that are stuck in the battling between the light and the dark, they can't realize that everybody has a hero bias. So even when someone's doing dark stuff, I'm not afraid of people that have darkness. I'm only afraid of people that believe they have none.
Right, right. Me too.
So they're the ones that will start to do all kinds of whacked out stuff in the name of for the public benefit. Let's
Hmm.
kill so and so. Let's do this bad thing because it's for the public good.
You see this happening all over the place right now.
Every genocide starts off like this.
Hmm.
Every genocide starts off like this. So what has to happen is you have to start embracing the opposites, fall in love with the world as it is, and then start to realize that everything is happening for and through you, not to you.
Yeah.
And as you do this, then your entire world will start to shift, dramatically shift, very, very fast. So then you start thinking, okay, what's the positive way for me to perceive all of this? And then that becomes your reality.
I love it.
That becomes your output. And then having faith to move mountains
Yeah.
because you can.
Yeah.
You know, the pyramids were built through thought.
Yeah, that was incredible. That was another validation that I had because my clients have talked about that. That Thoth built the pyramid in a different plane through thought.
And it was interesting how it even came out in the session that you asked the question, how do they do it? And I'd never thought of this or heard of it before. I'm like, well, we would ring a bell.
Yeah, I thought that was so fascinating. And there were 200 other people all
Mm-hmm.
focused in thought. That was
Yep.
really interesting.
And actually, I know the number now. It's 196.
Oh, okay. Oh, it's
And that
just,
relates to, that's 14 times 14. So it's
oh,
14 squared. 14 is the number of cuts of Osiris.
wow. Wow.
So,
Okay. So it's
because I kept
all been,
saying it's approximately 200 or about 200 people, it's
yeah.
196. It came to
So it's
me
all
after.
so symbolic.
It's all super symbolic, and it
Yeah.
represents the chakras as well.
I can't wait to see what we're going to find out next, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that whole thing about ringing the bell and then finding the standing wave of coalescence, that was like, I'm telling you, that was straight up. I don't know where that came from. Like, I mean, it was not from me. I can tell you that.
Yeah. It's going to be amazing to see what else comes through you. What
I'm
else
excited to do it with you. I'm
too.
excited to do it with you again and to go through, some of the individual past lives too. I'm very excited about it, and I have nothing to hide. So it's like for people that want to laugh, laugh, have fun with it,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
laugh away, but
Mhm.
I don't really have a choice but to be entirely authentic.
Well, it's such a gift you're giving people. I mean, I know even from just reading the comments, people say that it's like changed their lives, honestly, to listen to that. Some people say they have to listen to it over and over again. People are just so grateful to have this material as a reference that's so profound and so life-changing and for free. What a
Well,
gift.
and thank you so much for being open to doing this and to taking the risk and not just going forward with being a standard psychologist. You're changing lives,
I love
and
what I do
it's
so
making a
much.
huge difference.
It's so much fun for me. Honestly, selfishly, I love finding out what the higher self is going to share with me next. And it's so profound. I love sharing it with other people because I love helping people. So I get everything I always wanted when I was younger. I just didn't know it would show up like this.
Well, you definitely look like you're getting younger.
I'm 50 and
I'm
there's no
55.
AC. There's no AC in this room all of a sudden. It's hot in the keys.
Yeah, it's my air conditioning is not working well either. But you know what's funny is if I think about my parents when they turned 55, my age, they looked way older than me. I'll go back and look at pictures, and they look pretty good for 80s now. I mean, they still look really good. But seriously, like the difference, wow. So I think we're gonna live much, 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 much longer.
That's how the higher realms lived or still live. They live much, much longer. And it's all our thoughts.
It's all our thoughts.
You're healthier when you change your thoughts and it's all mind. It's shifting the perspective. It's loving this experience.
It is. That is the key. Changing your perception changes your world.
Yeah, really is.
Thank you so much for taking the time with me. How can people find you and find your work?
Thank you so much for having me on here and for everything and doing the sessions. People can find me if they go to theholistichehypnotist.com or just Google my name, Sarah Breskman Cosme. And I'm on Instagram, YouTube, just my name, and Facebook. All my sessions book up so fast. If I have anything, it's just gone for years. So I do workshops and I have a lot of workshops coming up. And I love those because I get to spend a lot of quality time with people and do the past life regressions as a group with a group of people. I love the workshops so much. They're so amazing because people seem to love them too. So you could just go to my website, theholistichehypnotist.com.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Great to be here with you. And hopefully we'll do this again soon. And until next time, everyone have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next week on Think Tank.